It wasn't just another slasher, it was the movie that picked up the horror genre, gutted it, and stitched it back together with sarcasm, irony, and blood.
911.
Let's go!
In 1996, Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson gave us a film that made us laugh at horror even as we screamed from it. Behind that Ghostface mask were accidents, arguments, improvisations, and chaos that could have killed the film before it ever reached theaters.
We gotta get the fuck out of here!
Stop right there!
Instead, it changed horror forever. These are the 20 weird facts you didn't know about Scream. Number 1. That opening sequence, Casey Becker alone at home, popcorn burning, phone ringing, is pure cinema. But what made it unforgettable wasn't just the script, it was the torment behind the scenes. To keep Barrymore's performance authentic, Craven used a trick. He spoke to her between takes about animal cruelty, an issue close to her heart. He'd recount heartbreaking stories about dogs being abused, and Barrymore, an outspoken animal lover, would well up with emotion. Then, as the cameras rolled, her eyes were already glassy, her breathing unsteady. It gave the opening its raw, trembling edge. Her fear wasn't just acting, it was pain rechanneled. That's why when Ghostface finally breaks through the glass and the scream rips from her throat, it doesn't feel staged. It feels like a soul cracking open. Number 2. Part of what makes Scream feel so suspicious, so tense, is that every character looks like they could be the killer. That wasn't just acting, it was strategy. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson were terrified of spoilers, especially after early script leaks online, so they decided to keep their own cast in the dark. Most actors only received the pages they were filming that week. Some weren't even told their characters' fates until the night before. Skeet Ulrich admitted he wasn't entirely sure if Billy was guilty until late in production, and Matthew Lillard played Stu with the same uncertainty, leaning into his manic unpredictability. Even Neve Campbell confessed she spent weeks convinced that Sidney might die in the finale. That cloud of doubt bled into performances. Every glance looked shifty, every joke seemed loaded, every kiss carried suspicion. It gave the film an authenticity that no direction could fake, because the paranoia on screen was real. And when the truth finally dropped, Billy and Stu unmasked, bloodied, screaming with glee, it was a shock not only to audiences, but to some of their fellow cast members. Number 3. For most of production, everyone called the film Scary Movie. It was cheeky, self-aware, a wink at the audience that perfectly captured Kevin Williamson's meta-horror script. The cast loved it, Wes Craven loved it, and all the call sheets and scripts bore that name. But Harvey Weinstein had other ideas. One day, while the film was deep in post-production, Weinstein got hooked on Michael and Janet Jackson's duet, Scream. The song was pounding out of radios everywhere, angry, defiant, unforgettable. He insisted the movie borrow the title. The crew was furious. To them, Scream sounded blunt, generic, even silly. They begged to keep Scary Movie, but Weinstein refused to budge, and overnight, Scary Movie became Scream. Ironically, a few years later, the parody franchise snatched up the discarded title and ran with it. What started as a frustrating, last-minute decision ended up iconic. Scream wasn't just a title. It was a command, a brand, a sound audiences still hear in their heads when that mask appears. Number 4. Originally, Deputy Dewey was written as a tough, no-nonsense cop. David Arquette came in to audition for Billy, the bad boy boyfriend, but asked if he could try Dewey instead. He played him goofy, awkward, endearing, a mama's boy trying to act tough. Craven loved it and rewrote the character around Arquette's energy. Moreover, Dewey wasn't supposed to limp into the ambulance at the end of the movie. In the original script, he died on the living room floor. Wes Craven filmed a second version, just in case. When test audiences saw Dewey's death, they erupted in outrage. Craven swapped in the ambulance shot at the last minute. It turned Dewey into the franchise's unlikely survivor, bumbling his way through sequel after sequel. Number 5. Sometimes fate walks in wearing ripped jeans and a wild grin. Matthew Lillard never planned on auditioning for Scream. He'd gone to support his girlfriend, who was trying out for another film being cast in the same office. While he was waiting in the hallway, joking around and being his usual animated self, a casting director happened to notice him. His energy was infectious, loud, unpredictable, almost too big for the room. They asked if he'd read a few lines for Scary Movie, the film's working title. Lillard shrugged, stepped inside, and within minutes had landed the role of Stu Macker. That chaotic, unhinged performance in the final act, the manic laughter, the blood-smeared face, the whining about his parents grounding him, came from a guy who wasn't even supposed to be there that day. It's one of the great accidents in horror history. A killer born out of coincidence, a hallway detour that changed the DNA of Scream forever. Number 6. Sometimes horror history folds back in on itself in the strangest ways. If you blink, you'll miss it. But there's a moment in Scream where one of horror's most infamous faces steps right into the chaos of Woodstock. Woodsboro. After the murders begin, a swarm of reporters descends on the high school, cameras flashing, microphones jabbing. And that crowd, hidden among the extras, is Linda Blair. Yes, that Linda Blair, the possessed child from The Exorcist. Wes Craven, always a horror historian at heart, invited her to cameo as a pushy TV reporter, peppering Gale Weathers with questions. It's quick, almost subliminal, but for sharp-eyed fans, it was a thrill. The ultimate victim of supernatural evil, now chasing down stories of a masked killer in suburbia. Blair herself later joked she loved the irony. She went from being the little girl who made the world scream to the reporter chasing after screams for ratings. It was Craven's way of tipping his hat to the horror lineage. A sly reminder that Ghostface didn't exist in a vacuum. He was haunting the same world once terrorized by Regan MacNeil. Number 7. On screen, it's one of the most unforgettable openings in horror history. Drew Barrymore, a bowl of popcorn, a ringing phone, and then terror spilling into every corner of a quiet suburban home. But what happened off-screen that night blurred the line between fiction and reality. As the cameras rolled and Barrymore unleashed raw, guttural screams, someone nearby thought the nightmare was real. A call went out to 911. Someone reported hearing a woman in danger. Within minutes, local law enforcement was on alert, believing they were rushing to stop an actual attack. The production crew scrambled to explain. It wasn't a murder, it was a movie. Barrymore's performance had been so convincing, her breath catching, her voice breaking, her sobs shaking the room, that it broke through the fourth wall and sent real-world chills into the night. For the cast and crew, it was a surreal reminder of just how powerful cinema can be. Ghostface may have been fictional, but Barrymore's scream had the power to summon the police. Number 8. Sometimes legends are born not from design, but from accident. Wes Craven knew his killer needed a face, but the problem was, nothing worked. During location scouting in California, producer Marianne Madalena and the crew were touring an old house they considered for filming. In one of the bedrooms, some say in a box, others say hanging on the wall, Madalena spotted a weird novelty mask. It was long-faced, hollow-eyed, mouth frozen in a permanent scream. It wasn't made for the movie at all. It was just a cheap Halloween mask from Fun World's Fantastic Faces line, nicknamed the Peanut-Eyed Ghost. She showed it to Wes Craven, who immediately thought it had that eerie, instantly recognizable quality he wanted. KNBEFX, the effects company, had been designing custom masks. None matched the creepy simplicity of this one. Craven tried to get rights to use it, and after some legal wrangling, Dimension struck a licensing deal with Fun World. That chance discovery, a novelty mask sitting in a random California house, became Ghostface, one of horror's most iconic looks. Number 9. Not every moment in Scream was scripted. Matthew Lillard improvised many of his lines in the final act. One, in particular, became immortal. "My mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me." He delivered it through a haze of fake blood and over-the-top hysteria, and Wes Craven loved it so much he kept it in. That one line captured the film's bizarre mix of terror and comedy. A murderer, fresh from brutal killings, suddenly whining like a grounded teenager. It was absurd, chilling, and unforgettable. The fact that it wasn't even in the script proves the magic Scream thrived on. Chaos creating brilliance. Number 10. Before Ghostface ever picked up the phone, there was a real killer terrorizing college towns in Florida. In August 1990, Gainesville was rocked by a series of brutal murders. Over just 4 days, 5 students were slaughtered by Danny Rolling, who would later be dubbed the Gainesville Ripper. He stalked his victims, broke into apartments at night, and killed with such cruelty that the entire community locked their doors, pulled blinds tight, and slept with weapons by their beds. The case dominated national headlines, nightmare fuel for every parent sending a kid off to college. One night, after watching a documentary about the murders, writer Kevin Williamson awoke to find a window in his own house open. A window he was certain hadn't been before. Inflamed by fear, he grabbed a knife, called a friend, and they discussed horror movies to calm his nerves. The next morning, sapped by worry and adrenaline, he started writing what would become the opening of Scream. That opening scene with Drew Barrymore, the masked killer on the phone, the sense of being hunted in your own home was Williamson's subconscious replaying the Gainesville murders through a cinematic lens. Ghostface became a fictional echo of a real monster who turned a college town into a graveyard. That's why the film's terror feels so immediate, so plausible, because behind the mask, there really had been a killer, and his shadow haunted the very first pages of Scream. Number 11. The final house party sequence, where the walls echo with tension, everyone looks like a suspect, Ghostface flits in shadows, runs about 42 minutes on film. But shooting that was a marathon. It dragged on 21 nights, all nighttime shoots. Lights, cameras, fake blood, tension. The cast and crew were exhausted, cold, often disoriented by the hours. They printed t-shirts after they wrapped that read, "I survived scene 118, a badge of honor." Every creak of floorboard, every false scream, every camera angle was etched into memory. It's in that strain, that fatigue, that you feel the pressure on screen. The party doesn't just feel dangerous, it feels real. Number 12. By the mid-1990s, 1990s, Wes Craven was worn down. He had lived through Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, A Nightmare on Elm Street, a whole career of nightmares that had both made him a legend and typecast him as the boogeyman director. When the script for Scary Movie, the working title for Scream, first landed on his desk, he hesitated. Another slasher? Another masked killer? He wasn't sure he had the stomach or the energy for it. He turned it down more than once. But then came the voice that cut through all the studio pressure. His own daughter. She read the script, devoured its sarcastic humor and razor-sharp commentary, and told him point blank he would regret it if he passed. To her, this wasn't just another horror movie. It was something new, funny, terrifying, and bold enough to reinvent the genre. Craven listened. Against his own doubts, against his exhaustion, he said yes. And in doing so, he didn't just revive his career, he helped resurrect the slasher itself. Without that single push from his daughter, Ghostface might never have stepped out of the shadows. Number 13. You'd think a small California town would welcome Hollywood money, not Santa Rosa. The local school district was approached about letting Dimension film at Santa Rosa High School. At first they agreed, but when administrators read the script and saw the violence, the vulgarity, and the blood, they backed out. Furious, the production scrambled for new locations, building sets on the fly. Wes Craven, insulted by the sudden betrayal, even slipped a thank you into the credits, a sarcastic special thanks to the Santa Rosa City School District Governing Board. It's still there, a small act of rebellion, preserved forever at the end of a horror masterpiece. Number 14. You can't have a slasher without gallons of blood. But the blood of Scream wasn't Hollywood's usual corn syrup and food dye mix. Instead, the crew used Bosco chocolate syrup. Why? It flowed better on camera, stuck to costumes in a way that looked real, and surprisingly, was less sticky under hot lights. The downside? The smell. After long shoots, the scent of chocolate mingled with sweat and latex masks, turning the set into a nauseating swamp.
This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life.
Actors complained they couldn't stomach the stuff after filming. What looked like terrifying gore on screen often left the crew gagging off screen, drowning in the sickly sweetness of Bosco. Number 15. Every time Ghostface's knife plunged into flesh, you didn't hear metal. You heard a cantaloupe. The sound design team experimented with stabbing and slicing dozens of foods, lettuce, melons, even raw steaks. In the end, plunging blades into cantaloupes mixed with bell peppers gave the perfect wet, crunchy, nauseating sound. Audiences squirmed because the noise bypassed the brain and hit the stomach. It's why even now, if you close your eyes and hear that squelch, your body winces before your mind even catches up. Number 16. When you watch Scream, Ghostface feels consistent. Same outfit, same mannerisms. But on set, Ghostface wasn't always Skeet Ulrich or Matthew Lillard. Sometimes it was Wes Craven himself. Sometimes it was stunt coordinator Dane Farwell. Each performer added quirks. Craven moved slower, deliberate, almost spectral. Farwell sprinted, lunged, and tackled with brutal force. That subtle inconsistency added something uncanny. Ghostface was never one killer. He was an idea, and that idea moved through bodies, behind doors, across lawns, making him feel even more impossible to pin down. Number 17. Wes Craven thought he knew battles with the MPAA, but Scream tested him like never before. The original cut was slammed with an NC-17 rating for intensity. Not gore, not nudity, intensity. Craven trimmed, snipped, argued. The board still pushed back, so the producers pulled a trick. They claimed the opening scene wasn't a dramatization at all, but an homage to true crime TV. That framing, presenting the violence as commentary rather than indulgence, finally convinced the MPAA to relent, dropping the rating to R. Had that not happened, Scream might never have reached mainstream theaters. The irony? Craven quietly admitted later that almost all of the footage remained intact. The MPAA thought they had forced changes, but the horror you saw was almost exactly what he wanted you to see. Number 18. Even legends reach breaking points. Halfway through filming, Wes Craven grew so frustrated with studio interference and ratings battles that he nearly walked away. The MPAA kept hammering him for excessive intensity. Miramax executives questioned the tone, and the long night shoots drained the crew. Craven later admitted he considered handing the reins to someone else. But the cast begged him to stay, reminding him how much his vision mattered. He pushed through, sleepless and stubborn. The man who once tried to escape horror found himself chained to it again, and thank God he stayed. Without him, Scream would never have been the phenomenon it became. Number 19. The first 12 minutes of Scream feel effortless, like terror unfolding in real time. But behind the curtain, that sequence was its own miniature war. Wes Craven treated the opening with Drew Barrymore as if it were a short film within the film. a standalone piece designed to leave audiences gutted before the title even appeared. What most don't realize is that it took 5 full days to shoot just that opening. Craven worked obsessively, capturing every phone angle, every tremble of Barrymore's lips, every flicker of fear in her eyes. The crew rigged stoves to burn popcorn on cue, set lights to dance like shadows from unseen intruders, and tested multiple stunt rigs for the final chase across the lawn. By day 3, Barrymore's voice was shredded from screaming, her throat raw, her eyes swollen from constant tears. She lived in that fear for nearly a week.
Please leave me alone.
Answer the question
and the crew followed her into exhaustion. The opening sequence alone cost close to $1 million, nearly 10% of the budget before a single frame of the rest of the film was shot. But it was worth every cent. Those 12 minutes weren't just an introduction, they were a statement. Craven was telling audiences, no one is safe, not even the biggest star, and the rules of horror you thought you knew are already dead. Number 20. By the mid-90s, slasher films were considered dead. Studios thought audiences had grown tired of masked killers and final girls. But then came Scream. Its mix of satire and scares resurrected the genre, grossing over $170 million worldwide against a modest budget. The movie didn't just spark sequels, it reignited an entire wave of horror, inspiring I Know What You Did, Last Summer, Urban Legend, and countless others. Critics hailed it as the movie that made horror cool again. Ghostface wasn't just chasing teenagers on screen, he was dragging the slasher genre out of the grave. Without Scream, the late 90s horror boom might never have happened. What began with a simple phone call ended up rewriting horror history. From Drew Barrymore's Real Tears to Matthew Lillard's accidental casting, from fake chocolate blood to a mask found in a dusty corner, Scream wasn't just made, it was survived. And in surviving, it rewrote the rules of horror. Ghostface didn't just slash through Woodsboro, he carved his place into cinema history. And the echoes of that phone call, that voice, that mask, they're still haunting us almost 3 decades later. If you loved uncovering these secrets, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into horror's strangest stories, and let us know in the comments, what's your favorite moment from Scream?